Greetings and welcome to the next station stop of our inquiry into root position dominant 7th chords. Part 4, summing up and some minor details. One of the obvious takeaways of this segment, in four-part writing, dominant 7th chords that are missing the fifth of the chord, that are incomplete, and in which the root is doubled, as shown on the left. These are very common. Having four possible tones, root, third, fifth, and seventh, a missing fifth in the 5/7 chord is not as noticeable as when a triad is missing the fifth, as shown on the right, since there are only three possible tones in a triad. Can you hear the difference? The dominant or 5/7 chord falls naturally into the tonic triad, and as we know from previous study, we call such a fall a cadence. Position the 5/7 on the upbeat, followed by the tonic or one chord on the downbeat, on the accented beat of the bar, and the two-chord connection creates the principal cadence. Can you find the 5/7s with omitted fifths? Look closely. Though in the minor cadence the voices lead to a minor tonic triad, the 5/7 is the same type of chord as in major. Notice the accidentals in the bass figures. Incidentally, how many complete chords can you find in this group of cadences? What about connecting the dominant triad with the dominant 7th chord? This is the 5 to 5/7 progression, and we introduce three possible situations. 1. The octave of the root of the 5/7 descends by diatonic step to the 7th. Note the 8 to 7 written in the bass figures of both major and minor modes. Observe that in the minor key example on the right, the chromatically raised third of the 5 triad, the leading tone, extends into the 5/7 chord in the same voice, and this is indicated below the figure 7 with a line. This line is optional only if both 5 and 5/7 are within the same measure. Let's listen to the two examples now. Situation 2. It is possible that the fifth of the 5 may skip up a diatonic third to the 7th. Again, observe that such upper voice movement in both major and minor keys is reflected in the thorough bass figures 5 to 7. Situation 3. You will encounter a small number of progressions where the third of the 5 chords skips up a diminished fifth to the 7th, then resolves. Observe that the voice leading is once more reflected in the figured bass. Notice also the open voicing of the final chord. How might you realize, that is, work out, the upper voices of this figured bass progression? First of all, remember that the figure 3 over the initial bass note designates the starting pitch of the soprano voice. Then, transcribe the figured bass line to a grand staff, label the key, and mark the scale degrees of chord roots with Roman numerals below. Note, chord roots are not necessarily the same as the bass notes. You have to know the meaning of the figures. If you don't remember, please review the 3 or 4 videos on inversions. Next, realize the figured bass by working out the upper voice lines according to the rules of four-part writing. Label the cadence. Observe that in this case, the voice leading of the tenor takes care of those 5 to 5/7 progressions discussed above. Now listen. Caution. The leading tone, or 7 triad, consists of the upper tones of the 5/7 minus the root, and is usually inverted. Though the 5th of the leading tone triad is the same note as the 7th of the 5/7, the voice leading may be different. The 5th of 7 may lead up or down. The 7th of 5 must descend by a step. Connecting 6 and 5/7. One of the first semester presentations on the minor mode explained why we must double the third of the submediant, or 6 triad, when voices lead to or from the 5/7. See link in the description. Otherwise, mistakes in voice leading will happen. There is a potential voice leading problem with the cadential 6/4 as well. Solve it with an incomplete 5/7, 5th omitted. On the left, the interval between tenor and soprano is not a perfect 5th, but similar motion in the bass gives it a rather amateurish sound. The right is better. Even with the stationary bass through both chords, the 5/7 with omitted 5th is still recommended and sounds professional. On the left, the 3 upper voices descend, lemming-like, into a diminished 5th. The variety of voice motion on the right is thus an improvement. Lemmings. Minor detail. Notice the double sharps in the bass figures on the left. These indicate the leading tone artificially created by raising the 7th scale degree of the minor scale by a chromatic semitone from F sharp to F double sharp. Observe on the right that a /5 or /6 figure can also suffice, but not a /7. In the latter case, the double sharp accidental must still be written below the 7, as it represents the third of the 5/7 chord. Unless, of course, the third is to be omitted, albeit a rare occurrence. Coming up is a set of 9 thorough bass progressions, followed by a possible realization of each. The key and meter signatures, bass line, and figures are as given in Yodison's Manual of Harmony. See description. Pause the clip to copy each of the bass lines in turn into your notebook, then try your hand at realizing them yourself. Do inform us of any errors you discover in our work. Workflow summary and assignment. 1. Transcribe the thorough bass, including figures, to staff paper, grand staff. 2. Label the key. 3. Add Roman numerals, label the cadence. 4. Realize the upper voices. 5. Play your results several times on piano keyboard. 6. Transpose all thorough bass lines to 2 other keys, your choice. 7. Work out the realizations again. Here are our solutions. Thank you for watching. If you like what you are learning, please share a link to the video. Post a question if you need clarification on the above points. Subscribe for updates by also tapping the bell icon next to the subscribe button on the video watch page.